Hello. I've tried to record this once and then a prompt came up on my computer, which meant I wanted to restart the entire thing. But there was a lot of ramblings in that first attempt, so hopefully this will be a bit more coherent. I say that as I start this with a ramble, but this is what I would say maybe is the definitive approach to Kiwi in set 7. I'm noticing a lot of people are still sticking with the Bell turn 1 and that the Storm Rage on. That's awesome, crack on, great. I saw a great game on the ICL stream where it was just going quite good to have the Let the Storm and have the songs in there. I think the things like the Scrooge and the, of course, just Alice in general was being the MVP. But yeah, it's awesome to see people still with that approach to the deck. But for me personally, as I did in my last video, I think including the Bell it creates too much of low rolls in your deck with the reward of a possible high roll that isn't as high as you'd like it to be, like Diablo high roll is. So for me personally, this is like my definitive list, and I've been testing it lots. Like I say, I want to update the guide. I want to make sure that everyone who's got access to that guide gets a fair deal with it. Of course, we didn't know that the ban was going to come in, so we just didn't know. I'm pretty sure Sailor's in the same boat with his guides as well, even though I'm not on the same level as him. But yeah, so I've been testing this lots. Lorcana, we managed to get over to the 1500 rating. We're managing it, testing it locally, testing it on the draw games, and yeah, it's mad because I really want to put some set 7 cards in here. As I say, it's not particularly a 60 locked. I think we're probably about 54, maybe 50 locked. And then what we want. There's a few other cards. Sorry, what I want to do is still keep testing some of these set 7 cards, and also as well the way that the meta is sort of forming right now is, of course, everyone assumed discards everywhere. You go on card market, all the discard cards were sold at like bazillions of pounds. And then everyone was like, well, the thing with discard is compared to the Hiram Sisu deck is we can actually counter that and we can actually go against it. We can put early removal in for Diablos. We can put cards that don't affect our hand size, like you'll notice in DKP put like all is found in his list, and we can just do tons of evasive checks and stuff like that. So you've got like Peter Pan into Iego and the Maui Shark. So overall, it's just sort of this tit for tat right now with discard's big. Let's counter discard, and then a deck like DKP's list. As much as I mentioned all his founders in there, I believe it's in there for the green matchups. It should sort of fall flat to the discard decks as long as they can get like a double Ursula Sing, uh, sudden chill or something. They can just completely take their hand out, and an Ursula on 2 to take the how far you go or whatever. So yeah, it's this weird matchup, weird thing of we're trying to counter something and then another thing comes through, and then Steel Song and Green Steel sort of still chugging along, I think. And I think with their list, they're sort of really trying to figure out what is the best option for this meta. They very much can go hard on cards that would help them into the Steel um, matchup. So they've added like Steel Song has added like Aerial Sonic Warrior, Big Cinderella, which is kind of rough for us because we just basically don't want them to be shifting those targets on because Aerial Sonic Warrior is fairly annoying. Thing is, if you can get the Alice Pluto and Cogsworth up, it's not that bad. Big Cinderella is always annoying. You just always hope they don't ever do it. But those cards are just not as useful into the Ruby matchups, and it's knowing how important Ruby is right now. The same with what's it called, Green Steel. They can keep putting Space Pirates Pete's in and win those Steel matchups if they want. But overall, that's not going to help them with Ruby matchups as much, I think. Pete being sideways, they don't really sing a lot of their songs. They seem to hard play them, and there's a lot of them are actions, and they have foxes and crabs, or they have Mauis, like a Maui one for one's it, and like that's not the worst in the world. Um, so yeah, and then it's like green purple discard. Like how relevant is that still going to be? People seem to enjoy it, but it looks like green purple is going more back to its tempo roots. So yeah, as much as I want to get the guide out and update it for everyone, it's all sort of knowing where the meta is going to land, so we can do the matchup guides and all those fun stuff. But yeah, sort of the cards in here, we've got probably a lot of them are just locked in. Like the one drops, I think right now Robin Hood is too good to not play. As much as he can be weak into the Ruby matchups, he just does what we want him to do in the Ruby matchups, where he'll quest for a bunch of lore, and then probably get removed by a Maui or a what's it called, uh, or a Medusa or whatever he gets removed by. But he does enough for us, whereas and he can control the board into the steel matchups. Like he shines the most in the steel matchups. But I feel we can get a bit more use out of him than Steel Song does. They shift and sing. They're not going to be getting the lore or the trading with it as much. They can trade with it, and they do trade with it, and they do quest with it. But a lot of the time, I'm looking at them getting that early. wheel off and stuff like that. And then the happies are in there just because like every steel or every deck that can do it like just puts like a cheap um character that can challenge Diablo. So you're seeing a lot of Pegasus, you're seeing a lot of Helga Sinclair, which is a card I'll mention in a little bit. But like even the Peter Pans and stuff like that, as much as they're working with the Maui Shark for that combo, they are in there to sort of give the deck even more green cover as well, and also like you've got Iegos and stuff like that that are coming in, so you can go Peter Pan into Iego and then take out their Genie, because the Genie Wars are fun for people. If anyone enjoys Genie Wars, that's fine, but not for me. You just sort of play your Genie, they play theirs. Can you deal with it? Which is like grab your Genie or play the Iego tech that everyone's on. So yeah, just so much going on in the meta. The Calhoun, I think, is the card that is a card that isn't particularly locked, which is mad. I've seen a lot of people play Anna, and one of the cards that I'd want to mention is Helga Sinclair, which is just again another Diablo cover, and it depends because right now Green Steel or just Green in general, sorry, is not having an amazing day, and that's mainly down to just everyone's just teching for it so hard because they just don't want to lose to the green matchup. So they're putting cards like this, which in general is just a bad card. It turns sideways and it's like the freest trade of all time. Is really just in there, so if they have a Diablo or like a Diablo that's been put in a cove, you can just take it out straight away. So as a card to test again, it's that thing of like the negative of it doing there. It's also a 3/4, so it can trade up nicely with things like it can mean their Smee might not want to quest because you'll take the Smee out. It might be better in Amber Steel because they get the healing effect. But the thing with our deck is we want kind of everything to have a bit of a snapback. So when we turn it sideways, when they hit something, their thing dies as well. So if they were to run a Fox into Calhoun, okay, that's fine. The Calhoun dies, but the Fox dies as well. Whereas Helga, it doesn't. But is the benefit of basically locking Diablos out of being played great? And also, if we just play that card, would they just play Kit or Muses and bounce it back, and it's this worthless two cost? So, yeah, sort of that's a card to sort of keep testing in the list. Doc, yeah, locked in card draw, and then of course the rest of this stuff. John Silver is a number, like the numbers on John Silver going up and down. I think. Um, I really like three because a lot of the times when you just get the Alice Pluto and like maybe a two drop or Cogsworth setup, just drawing into John Silver's off the top. Like a John Silver off the top can be better than drawing a two quester because it just means their big thing can't hit your characters for a turn and you get another full turn of questing. And that's just really powerful. And then Maui Sharks and like Tinkerbells like float around in the meta. They're not that great, but they're sort of here and there, sort of float around. So it just overall covers quite a lot. Yep, Pete Forex, Scrooge McDuck. He's a card that we're debating, and I'll show you the card that I'm testing for. Is Gantu, and as I saw the ACL game, um, and I think they had some Gantus in the list, and I've seen some Gantus floating around in people's lists, and it's just like it is that thing of you can make your deck go from having three Pete effects to now having uh, five, six, seven, or eight, if how many you include. I think for us it would be just a swap for Scrooge out and try him out. But on the flip side, he'll give you that help into the green steel and amber steel, but into ruby sapphire, he's just like more food for um, the Sisu really, and he only quest for one. He doesn't really, he's not going to trade up with a what's it called? A Maui like the way Scrooge is. Scrooge will get his two lore, then like get 1/1 with a Maui, which like sometimes is just fine because it's a 4 cost for their 5 cost. But into that matchup, he's not going to particularly do too much. He maybe hold the B prep for a little bit longer if they've ramped into a B prep rather than a Sisu, which they might try and do. So it's that thing of I really want to see how much it positively affects the deck, including the card, compared to negatively. But yeah, I think the stopping the songs being sung for a turn is pretty good, and then making them cost two more is also pretty awesome as well. And especially for our deck where it's only going to hit that Baboom because the Gantu will hit both players' cards. Um, and that Baboom is only in there. I can talk about that Baboom because I'm segueing into it. Is there's a lot of Robin Hood right now. It's just that I've noticed majority of the time they want to shift, they want to sing wheel. If they shift, you just pretty much lose on the spot. So it feels like now I need to weigh up. Is we had Baboom in before in set six, so we're trying to weigh up really. If I use the Baboom like on two instead of playing a two drop, is that negative tempo swing for me because I didn't develop a character gonna be good enough to still win the game. But stopping their Robin Hood shift could be good. If you still scope a boom in and take out their Robin Hood shift into Alice, into Pluto, that's still a really strong line. You're going to set up something strong, and they're going to be a character down as well. So I think it can still work, and it also is just like another random Diablo cover that you can include in the deck. And it's not just the Robin Hood shift, like you got the Queen as well. And sometimes you'll be surprised that just 2 damage that you can pay for can just win you a game. Like maybe you got an amazing board, but they've played a Lawrence, and you can just take that big tempo loss, take it out with a Calhoun. And now that like the biggest threat on their board was this Lawrence taking out any of your characters for a fairly good trade, and then probably getting Rapunzel healed is going to be off the board. So it's just fairly decent. And it's sort of like I can't think of anything else that does the job better. I think two fire the cannons is like um, just too much uninkables in the deck. And also on the turn two, if you're playing fire the cannons, that means you're going to be playing another one drop on turn two, which just like sometimes you're just on turn because that's pretty much the only turn you'd ever want to play Baboon. Maybe on later on in the game when you have these like tempo swing turns where you could like pop a Lawrence or their own Pluto and then hit it with something. That would be fine. But overall, it's more of a turn two to stop a shift and maybe a Diablo. So on that turn two, you pretty much don't need that one spare ink. Not for the downside of like having an inkable in the deck, and that also means that when Baboom, like the 90% of the time, you don't need it. You can just put it into the inkwell. So definitely, that's the option that we've been going for. And then the rest of the deck's quite standard. The two Baymax in there are still sticking around. I quite like Baymax. But I think I've not put too much respect on Bagheera, and I've been saying I don't think it's great because we're basically playing a character that we hope dies. It's pretty much like at this point where it's like a grab your swords that your opponent controls. I think um, all the Amber Steel would love it because they love 2 damage splattered around, so they can just like start Rapunzel healing everything. It's likely we're probably not going to get that 2 lore, but in a sense, if he's a top deck, you can stand him upright and then quest for 2, and then you've got the bodyguard. And you can give Alice ward, so things do have to run into it. But I think it's just a card that a lot of people could play around. I think it does need a bit more thorough testing from me before I roll it out because the another like design feature of Kiwi is that we want all of our cards to get us as much value and questing power as we can. If we're playing a card on the board that we um, kind of expect to just be removed and be banished like as soon as it can. I don't think that's great. Kind of, when you're playing Alice or a Baymax or a Pluto, or maybe not the Pluto, sorry, like an Alice or a Baymax or Cogsworth down, we're hoping that we're just going to give some more life to our characters on the turn. You know, um, like an average lifespan of a card, like being on the board in a TCG, isn't particularly long. But with our deck, we kind of extend it by like 1 turn because we've everything ward and resist, and that 1 turn will give us another turn of questing, and sometimes that's enough to just win the game. But Bagheera, you're playing it hoping it gets removed, or not hoping it gets removed, but the aim is that it gets removed and then it gets its effect that makes it a bit more powerful. So yeah, there's a few more cards to test, and then again, I just sit on Dreamborn scrolling through set 7 cards until one of them looks quite interesting, and I message Justin and say, "Is this card good?" And he says no. But that is my testing process. And Mukduk Man is in there. Yeah, we took the mines out. It just, I don't know. I think you could still run the mines. I don't think it's that bad to run the mines. I think our deck probably runs it better than any of them. But it's just, I wanted the Babooms were doing the job that I wanted a bit better. You could still do that thing like play a 1 drop or play nothing on 1, play mines on 2, then play happy move mines. And it's like, yeah, but my turn 3, which is like one of my more impactful turns than my turn 1 or 2, I've kind of had to use to play a 1 drop and move it to a location to do 2 damage. And by that point, the Diablo could have drawn like 3 cards anyway. So it makes more sense to just be like, here's Baboom, and here we go, we'll just take it out. And on the draw, you can't even do that versus a Robin Hood shift line. So yeah, you'd be forcing yourself to play a card you don't really want on the board just for the 2 damage effect. So yeah, I kind of cut the mines in the end and just kept with the Babooms. With the Mukduk Manners, Ruby's still around, and it's also that card that just applies pressure into any matchup. If you're a little bit ahead, you can play, and here's a mana, so you can probably deal the board, but um, you can't really deal with the mana. And what I've liked of mana as well is like mana kind of unlocks your ability to quest with Cogsworth, because you'll play the mana down quest with Cogsworth. They'll most likely run their damage into Cogsworth, and then the mana will stick for a bit longer. But Yeah, and there's just one other thing I wanted to prompt out. Someone posted a meta report over the weekend of the event, and that was before the ban happened, and this was after the ban happened. And I kind of get it if you were going to an event with prizing that you very much would like to win. Um, you know, the Kiwi was still fairly small. I mean, to be fair, aggro like was quite big on the meta share, but you probably still want to try and play one of these decks. I think as well, a lot of these aggro players came in when the Bell was introduced to the deck, and they didn't know that before in set six we never really had a Bell, and we just played a very strong curve sort of style deck. But we're still winning events and doing all right with it, so I'm probably going to stick around with it. It's crazy that we're being put into the other section. I wonder how little there actually was of Sapphire Steel to form into that other section. But as I say, this is the interesting thing about the meta. Like before, look how like not dense it was. It was three kind of decks at the top, and then the rest were like taking their chances. But this is a fairly even spread out meta, and Purple still was the biggest deck that turned up that weekend. I'm pretty sure like in Germany, Ruby Sapphire or Ruby Amethyst, sorry, were like the best decks in like Germany or something like that, and then like Steel Song. Like I think you have this point where these three, maybe five. I'm gonna push for five because for some reason Ruby Sapphire it's all the way down here. Have the chance to all like swap and be like the top dog of the week. With some like new busted new list or some like text to counter the other one. So like overall, if you were a game designer, you would be a lot happier with that. That's just a lot more spread out, a lot more choices, and you've still got these like interesting, fun ones. Of course, on a personal level, as someone who enjoys Sapphire Steel, I felt like if they just didn't touch the high room, we would have like one bar around here that would say Sapphire Steel ramp, and that would have just kept me happy. But I can't keep going on about what is it? Can't cry over spilled milk. So that's just what's happened. That's the way it is. And yeah, I'll probably next video will be like a bit more of a meta breakdown, meta report, and like the decks that I've been trying and enjoying, and what I'd like suggest you wanted to play if you didn't want to play Kiwi, because I completely understand there was a lot of players who still watch my stuff but weren't into the aggro style deck. So like, thank you very much for the support, but I completely understand if Kiwi just never really clicked for you or it's just not your sort of game style. And yeah, I play a lot of it, but I always was very lucky with the color combo that I picked that we had the ramp and we had Kiwi and I could just swap between them when I got bored. Now there's one deck in the color combo, so I have to swap to the other decks when I get a bit bored and want to try something new. So yeah, I hope some of this was useful.